I mean, there's no end. There's no end. It's too exciting. Life is too profoundly amazing to think that it's over.
Diane Keaton has always been a name that brings warmth and nostalgia to anyone who has ever loved Hollywood's golden age. Her laughter, her quirky fashion, her unforgettable charm, they all painted the picture of a woman full of light and confidence. But behind the glasses, the hats, and the laughter, there was a woman who carried the heavy weight of loneliness, regret, and fading memories. Diane's story isn't only about fame and success. It's about love, loss, and the quiet pain that often hides behind a smiling face. In her younger days, she was the bright star who worked alongside legends like Al Pacino, Jack Nicholson, and Woody Allen. She was funny, radiant, and independent. The kind of woman who didn't just follow Hollywood's rules, she rewrote them. But as the years went by, time began to reveal another side of her life. It was the story of a mother who gave everything to her children, and an artist who began to fade into the quiet shadows of her own home. In a world where glamour ruled everything, Diane Keaton was different. She wasn't interested in being perfect. Her style was unique, her humor was strange, and her charm came from being completely herself. She wore men's suits to red carpets when others wore gowns, spoke her mind when others played safe, and never let Hollywood define who she was. This fearlessness made her unforgettable. Yet behind her courage, there was always a hidden sadness, a longing for love and connection. Diane never married, even though she had high-profile relationships with famous men like Al Pacino and Warren Beatty. She once said, "Marriage was never my thing, but love always was." Those words showed the quiet conflict in her heart. She wanted to love deeply, but never wanted to lose herself in it. As the cameras stopped flashing and scripts became fewer, Diane began to focus more on her family, especially her two adopted children, Dexter and Duke. She wanted to give them a stable home, something she never fully had in the unpredictable world of fame. Becoming a mother changed everything for Diane. She adopted her daughter Dexter in 1996 and her son Duke in 2001, long after her peak Hollywood years. For her, motherhood was not a late-life decision. It was a new beginning. She often said that her children gave her life meaning beyond the screen. Diane would cook, clean, and read stories to them at night, just like any other mom, far away from the bright lights and flashing cameras. But as her children grew older, they began to see her differently. Not as the famous actress Diane Keaton, but as an aging woman struggling to keep up with time. They wanted to live their own lives, to make their own mistakes, and sometimes that meant growing distant from the woman who loved them the most. Diane felt that silence in her home, a silence that grew louder each passing year. She once admitted that the hardest part of motherhood was learning to let go, even when your heart wants to hold on forever. As Diane aged, her connection with Hollywood began to fade. The scripts stopped coming as often, and the offers that did arrive were mostly for smaller, supporting roles. While she still smiled in public and gave charming interviews, her private life became quieter. She often spent her evenings at home, surrounded by books, old photographs, and memories that time could never erase. Her house in Los Angeles became a museum of her life, every corner filled with reminders of her journey. The laughter from Annie Hall, the tears from Something's Gotta Give, and the long nights spent chasing perfection. Friends noticed that Diane was withdrawing from public life. She stopped attending big Hollywood parties and red carpet events. Even her once bold fashion statements, the hats and suits that made her iconic, became rarer. Her children visited, but less often. Her laughter, once loud and contagious, turned softer, like an echo of what it once was. In her later years, Diane began facing health problems. The strong, vibrant woman who once commanded every room started moving more slowly, speaking more softly. Time had left its mark, and the loneliness that had followed her for years grew heavier. She would sit by the window, gazing out at her garden, the same garden she once filled with laughter, music, and the voices of her children. Now the silence spoke for itself. She found comfort in her faith and in small daily rituals, watering plants, organizing old photos, writing letters she never sent. People close to her said she often talked about the past, about the people she missed, and the moments she wished she could live again. Even as her health declined, Diane tried to stay positive. She once said, "I've lived many lives, but the best one is the one I'm still trying to understand." Those words carried wisdom, and also sadness, the understanding that even the most beautiful lives are not without regret. Despite her struggles, Diane Keaton never stopped inspiring others. Her honesty about aging, love, and imperfection made her a role model for many women who grew up watching her films. She wasn't afraid to show her wrinkles or talk about fear. She proved that beauty wasn't about youth. It was about courage. Her memoirs and interviews revealed a woman who had made peace with her choices, even when they were painful. She taught her fans that it's okay to live differently, to be flawed, and to keep searching for meaning even when life feels uncertain. In many ways, Diane's life became a mirror for so many others. People who had lost love, who were afraid of loneliness, or who wondered if they had done enough. Through her movies and words, she gave them comfort and strength. She showed that being alone doesn't always mean being lonely, and that every ending can also be a quiet beginning. As the years passed, Diane's public appearances became rare. Rumors spread about her health and isolation, but she never confirmed or denied them. She preferred silence over headlines. One winter morning, neighbors noticed her house lights had stayed on all night. When a close friend visited, they found Diane sitting peacefully by the window, her favorite hat resting beside her. It was as if she had fallen asleep mid-dream, surrounded by the things she loved most. The world didn't know immediately. News spread slowly, and when it did, Hollywood stood still. Fans and stars across generations shared their memories of her, of the laughter she gave them, the honesty she showed, and the way she turned imperfection into art. For many, her passing felt like losing a friend they never met but always admired. The house that once echoed with laughter was now silent, but her spirit remained. In every film, every line, every glance that once lit up the screen. Today, Diane Keaton's name still shines brightly. Her films continue to play, her books still inspire, and her story still touches hearts across the world. She taught us that fame fades, but love remains. She reminded us that life isn't measured by how loud it is, but by how deeply it is felt. Diane's story is more than just a tale of an actress. It's a reflection of every person who has ever struggled to balance love, work, and self-worth. She showed that it's okay to live differently, to grow old gracefully, and to face loneliness with courage. Her journey may have ended quietly, but her message will echo forever. It's never too late to love, to forgive, and to be yourself. Diane Keaton lived with grace, laughed with truth, and loved with all her heart. And that is the kind of legacy that never truly fades away. Before the fame and fortune, Diane Keaton was just a young woman from Los Angeles with a big dream and an even bigger heart. Born Diane Hall in 1946, she grew up in a modest household where her mother was a homemaker and her father worked as a real estate agent. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it was filled with love, laughter, and imagination. Her mother encouraged her creativity and told her stories that made Diane believe she could become anything. That sense of wonder stayed with her forever. When she moved to New York to chase her dreams, she faced countless rejections. Casting directors told her she wasn't beautiful enough, not thin enough, or simply too different. But Diane refused to change. Her quirky personality and natural charm eventually landed her a role in the Broadway musical Hair, which opened the doors to film auditions. Her breakthrough came when she was cast in Woody Allen's Play It Again, Sam, and later in Annie Hall, a role that would change her life forever. In that film, Diane wasn't pretending. She was being herself, awkward, honest, and full of soul, and the world fell in love with her. The success of Annie Hall turned Diane Keaton into a household name. She won an Academy Award and became one of the most sought-after actresses in Hollywood. Yet, behind the cameras, fame brought a new kind of fear. The fear of being seen, but not truly known. Diane dated some of Hollywood's most powerful men, including Warren Beatty and Al Pacino, but none of those relationships lasted. She once said in an interview, "I loved them all, but I loved my freedom more." It wasn't that she didn't believe in love, she simply didn't want to lose herself inside it. Her independence was both her strength and her curse. She wanted to be loved deeply, but she also wanted to remain true to her own spirit. Many people never understood how a woman so full of warmth could also be so alone. But Diane saw solitude not as a punishment, but as a space for creativity. While others found comfort in relationships, she found it in art, photography, and writing. She filled notebooks with thoughts about life, age, and love. She was always searching for something, perhaps peace, perhaps herself. And though she often laughed about it, the longing was always there in her eyes. As the years went on, Diane's attention shifted from red carpets to her home. Motherhood became her greatest role. She often said that her children taught her more about love than any film ever could. She was protective, nurturing, and sometimes overly cautious, afraid of losing the only thing that truly mattered. But as her children grew into adults, they began to live their own lives, leaving Diane with an emptiness she couldn't quite fill. She would sit in her living room surrounded by old photo albums, pictures of smiling faces, birthdays, and family trips. Each photograph told a story of love and distance, of moments that slipped away too quickly. Sometimes she would smile, other times she would cry quietly, missing the noise that once filled her home. Friends who visited her often found her sitting near her piano, lost in thought. She would talk about her children proudly, but with a tone that carried quiet sadness. "They have their own lives now," she would say softly. That was the hardest part of being a mother, realizing that love means letting go, even when your heart refuses to. As Diane looked at herself in the mirror in her later years, she saw more than just wrinkles and gray hair. She saw every version of herself: the dreamer, the lover, the mother, and the lonely soul. Time had taken away her youth, but not her spirit. She still smiled when she talked about her movies, especially Something's Gotta Give and The First Wives Club. Those roles made her laugh again, reminding her that even pain can be turned into art. Yet, she often felt like the world was moving too fast without her. Social media, new stars, new trends, everything seemed so far from the Hollywood she once knew. She found peace in simple things: old jazz records, long walks, and cups of tea in her garden. But there were nights when the silence became too deep, and she would whisper to herself, "Is this how all stories end? With a whisper instead of applause?" She wasn't afraid of dying. She was afraid of being forgotten. That thought haunted her, though she rarely admitted it. Deep down, Diane knew that no matter how bright a star shines, it eventually fades from the sky. Yet she hoped her light, her laughter, her courage, her love, would keep glowing in the hearts of those who once saw her shine. When news of Diane Keaton's passing spread, Hollywood paused to remember her not just as an actress, but as a woman who lived authentically. Directors, co-stars, and fans flooded social media with tributes. Al Pacino called her a light that never dimmed, while younger stars referred to her as the Queen of Honesty. Her children, Dexter and Duke, stayed away from the cameras, choosing to grieve privately. They later shared that their mother's final wish was simple. She wanted to be remembered not for her fame, but for her kindness. Her funeral was small, intimate, just as she wanted. Friends placed white roses beside her portrait, her favorite flower, while a quiet melody played in the background. Those who knew her best said that even in death, Diane managed to make everything feel sincere and beautiful. Her passing was peaceful, like the closing of a gentle chapter. Though her voice would no longer fill rooms, her words and films would forever echo in the hearts of those she touched. To the world, she was a star. To her children, she was home. Even today, Diane Keaton's story continues to inspire millions around the world. People remember her not just for Annie Hall or The Godfather, but for her courage to be real in a world built on illusion. She showed that aging is not the end of beauty, it's the evolution of it. Her honesty about love, loneliness, and self-worth gave strength to people who were afraid of growing old. Every interview she gave, every quote she shared, felt like a piece of wisdom wrapped in humor. She once said, "You can't live your life waiting for somebody else to give it meaning." That line has become a guiding light for many who struggle with self-acceptance. In her quiet way, Diane taught us how to love ourselves, how to embrace imperfection, and how to face the mirror without fear. Her life was a delicate balance between laughter and tears, and maybe that's why people connected with her so deeply. She was not a goddess or a mystery. She was simply human, beautifully and completely. Years after her passing, film critics and fans continue to revisit Diane's work. New generations discover her films and fall in love with her all over again. In every performance, they find a piece of truth, a look, a pause, a smile that says more than words ever could. Her legacy goes beyond acting. It lives in the way she made people feel. She taught women that they could age with grace and still dream boldly. She reminded men that strength and sensitivity could coexist. Her movies were not just entertainment. They were lessons in humanity. And even now, when people watch her on screen, they feel as though she's speaking directly to them, reminding them to laugh a little louder, love a little deeper, and never apologize for being different. Diane Keaton may have left this world quietly, but her spirit continues to whisper through the art she left behind. It tells us that a life lived with truth, love, and courage never truly ends. Perhaps the greatest beauty of Diane Keaton's life is that it reminds us how fleeting everything is. Fame, youth, even love. Yet within that fleetingness lies something eternal, the ability to touch others' hearts. Diane lived her life like a poem, sometimes confusing, sometimes painful, but always sincere. She didn't chase perfection. She chased meaning. And in doing so, she became timeless. As the world moves on,